Good. All right, everyone. I feel like I need to follow that last talk by saying I am a CISP, so if you're looking, look no further. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and welcome to We Are the Enemy of the Good. I'm going to start off just a quick about me slide. I currently work as VP of Security for a consultancy up in the Pacific Northwest called Intrinium. I've been doing InfoSec for probably about 15 years now. Did the sysadmin, DBA, pen tester, ended up having to get a QSA in the middle of that. Did the consultant, manager, moved up the stack, did all of that. I'm on Twitter, Hacker Hiker. You can follow me if you're looking for tweets about security or hiking, surprisingly enough. And then lots of memes and nerd stuff. And I occasionally apologize for a Seattle sports ball outburst. It occasionally happens. My followers usually go down a little bit when it happens, and I apologize in advance. It might happen if you follow me. So why the hell are we here? So the best way for me to talk about this is I've noticed a little something in our industry, and you know, just from sitting around LobbyCon and from talking to people and everything, and so I wanted to bring it out to actually have a discussion here about it, so we can all, you know, look at it, think about what we're going to do. So, but to get there, I think it's best that we start out with a little story time. So, if anyone wants to come and sit down and get your apple slices and juice boxes, juice boxes, you can do so here, and we'll tell a little story, okay? You can, yeah. Sit on the, just, you know. All right. Yeah, right? I can't promise you there's much left, though. Hey, there's enough. All right. So, it's all good either way. All right, so once upon a time, there was a man, and he was in the deep, dark woods, and he was wandering through, and he was on a quest, and we'll call this man the CIO, okay, just because, he doesn't really see himself as a hero, but the world might. We'll pretend. And he is on a message, just a mission from the Queen, and we'll call her the CEO, all right? And She wants to be fair and just, but perhaps the kingdom doesn't have as much gold as it once did, if you get my meaning. And so she sent him on this mission, this quest, so that they can bring more gold to the kingdom. He has a goal. There's a mountaintop. He must get to that mountaintop, and yet there are scary things, perhaps Russians or other things on either side of him that might get in his way. There's dangers that lurk just everywhere as this poor CEO CIO is working his way along this journey. But wait. Two figures appear before him. They offer him a way to get to the mountaintop. The first, the wizard. The wizard offers magic boxes and tinctures, all sorts of variety of magic things that will help him and just make everything easy and take him directly to the top of the mountain. The CIO is intrigued. Then compliance arrives with their holy book. And they bring their holy book from on high, and they say, follow these rules, and you will get to the top of the mountain. The CIO is looking back and forth, wondering what to do, but wait. A third figure appears. Who could this be? It's clad in a black con t-shirt. I wonder what this man might have to offer. Does he have some knowledge or some insight we could bring to this particular story? Perhaps he does. He walks forward slowly and he says, "Oh my God, we're all gonna die! Don't listen to these assholes! We're gonna die right now!" So clearly, the CIO identifies him as a crazy person and proceeds to ignore everything else that he says from this point on forward. And now the priest and the wizard just tell him everything to do, and our poor hacker goes back to LobbyCon, the inn, we'll call it in this tale, and says, "Oh, these CIOs, they just want their checkbox compliance, and they want their little magic shiny boxes to fix anything. This industry is shit, man." And then the hacker giggles in his beer while the place falls down to ransomware. The end. So, you don't have to stay there for the rest of it if you want to. But thank you. So let's talk about this for a minute. You know, what happened? What happened here? I mean, where did this guy go wrong? Where did the hacker go wrong? And what makes this magician and priestess, these figures that always seem to drive the industry, what makes their message appealing to the CIO? I mean, what is it that people actually get from them, and what can we do to actually make our message resonate with the CIOs and with the people that we're trying to get our message to? Because we care and we want to actually get our message there, but at the end of the day, sometimes they're not listening. So let's talk about some of those ideas of where we go wrong in this particular process. So first off, the goal, the mountaintop. What is that? Now, in your mind, I know a lot of you are thinking, oh, in this allegory, the goal is security, but the goal is never security. The goal is for the company to make money. At the end of the day, as much as security is our goal, and it's what we think about more than anything else, we have to remember that security is never the goal of the business. At the end of the day, they are supposed to get their job done, and if we don't take the time to actually understand what they're trying to accomplish, how can we expect to give good advice about what they're trying to do? So the most important thing we can do is to sit there and actually think about what are they doing and try and understand that. And we'll get into that a little bit more later. But if we just take away this, if we don't understand what they're trying to accomplish, we can't help them get there. Second thing, the words. We are at our hearts engineers. We're smart people. We know the difference between things. We're very specific about the words we use and what things mean. At the end of the day, we love to say that there's a nuance between various phrases that we'll have. And we love to say things like, well, actually, that's not quite right. But when you're dealing with like the CIO or within these guys, the words don't matter. They don't really care. What they're looking for is an explanation of why things are important and why they should care about things and how it will ultimately support the business. So if you really think about it, in this room, if I started a conversation about vulnerability assessment versus a penetration test versus red team, you'd probably set off a holy war. I mean, people would just start killing each other. There'd be blood on the walls and everything like that. But guess what? As important as it is to us in this room, CIOs don't care. They're more interested in the result. They're more interested in finding out what are the problems that they're facing in their organization and how should they fix them and how should they get to that point. So a good example of this, there was a talk I gave, and you can jokingly refer to it as a muggle talk or whatever you want to call it, but I was giving a talk to a group of CIOs and industry things at a trade show, and the concept was I was talking about Eternal Blue, because there was just kind of a talk where I go over what particular things happened and what was going on and everything in there, and the overall story of it, the idea was that it was basically the plot to a bad horror movie. I mean, you have this weapon escape from a government lab and wreaks havoc all around the world, and then you have this quirky hero appear out of nowhere, and then the post-credit scene, the government hauls him off, and it's just a bunch of bullshit, but it's still, it's the type of movie that you would see. So the point I was trying to make with that as I'm going through it is that when you compare what happened with Eternal Blue, it's really just a bad remake. It's a bad remake of Conficker, what we saw in 2008. Same type of attack, same type of panic, same type of, Microsoft releases patch, time passes. And then it attacks and does a bunch of damage when there's a bunch of stuff that isn't patched. So that was the point I was trying to illustrate. So what happens next? Immediately after this talk on Twitter, I get, actually, somebody tells me, no, actually, Conficker or MSO 8067 actually uses RPC. Eternal Blue uses only SMB. That's not even accurate. And I'm thinking, there goes the point. This is the type of example, and it doesn't matter what's accurate or not. It's about looking at the point, looking at the trends of what's going on, and being able to compare those stories when you're actually talking about, when you're talking to the CIO and the CEO, being able to say, this is the patterns that we're seeing, and this is why this is important, this is why you have to fix this problem. And as an industry, we just get so hung up on being exactly perfectly right. And amongst us, it's fine to be exactly perfectly right. We want to do those things, but is it really necessary when we're talking up a level to the CIO or the CEO? The other thing is the perfect. We, as an industry, and particularly when you're a younger security guy, and I can tell you, I fell into this trap when I first got into this industry of really looking at what's the perfect solution. Well, we got to do the best solution that we can because there's all these bad guys and goblins and gremlins and everything in this damn forest that are coming at us to try and get us, and so we have to fix this thing to be perfect. Took a long time to realize that there really isn't a such thing as a perfectly secure system. I mean, the perfectly secure one, what? Encase it in concrete and throw it at the bottom of the ocean, and no one can get in there, but it's also not very good for a business. So you always have to remember to support the business. And one of the examples, one of the things I want to talk about here is, going back to the previous example, vulnerability assessment, pen test, red team, what's better? Well, it depends on what the outcome is, what you're trying to accomplish, what the business needs. I mean, when you look at, say, a red team exercise, we work for a lot of small to medium-sized businesses. We have just a huge portfolio of them that we've worked with. And when you get right down to it, for most of them, I mean, do they really need us flying over the building with drones and, doing all these other things to try and you'd figure out ways to break into their organization? No, they have simpler problems. They have more basic problems that they need to fix and that they need to address. So in those cases, quoting that type of engagement or trying to get them to bite off or trying to convince them that they need to do that kind of engagement probably does them a disservice, because you're looking for what can get the most bang for the buck for the customer and being able to help them out the most. So that's just one of the examples that I want to hit on that particular topic, to say that we can't let the perfect thing, at the end of the day, the perfect solution, being able to protect against, really highly skilled and particular attackers and doing those kind of things is important, but is it the best thing for them? And at the end of the day, sometimes they have to do what they have to do, and there's ways that they have to get their business done. So we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Another example of this that I saw, and this is, somebody tweeted this out, and it was just somebody who's very respected and certainly has a lot more Twitter followers than me, and I'm not trying to dog them or anything, but I'm trying to illustrate a point here, that one of the things that was said was, if the number of security tools that you have outnumbers the number of security people you have, you're doing it wrong. And I thought to myself, on its surface, it's not a bad point. I mean, it's not a bad thing to think about. But when you consider this fact, let's look at the small business economy, which actually makes up 99.7% of all companies in the United States. That statement is probably wrong for all but 0.3 of the places that are out there, because there's no way any small business is going to have more security people than security tools. It's just not going to happen. And that's what I think sometimes is, that we get caught up in these little sort of pigeonhole ideas of saying we're, we get clouded by what we do all the time and trying to focus it in there. I mean, certainly that kind of statement is probably true at FedGov or Fortune 500 or that sort of thing. But at most of the organizations that are out there, and even if you look at the organizations that make up half the employment of the country, a statement like that's just not going to be true. So we really have to think about what we're saying and think about the mission of the businesses that we have before we're actually trying to approach the problems and actually try and help solve the security issues that they have. And the final example I'll give of kind of how we're doing it wrong here, and we're looking at these things, is that the risks. Gosh, we love to treat everything like it's this thing. We really do. We love to treat everything as though it's a complete disaster, even when it isn't. And this is a trap I fall into, and I have, I remember first starting out, just little things you identify, like, something like a PHP info page that's looking, leaking out there and everything like that. It's like, that's not, yeah, that's something they should clean up. Yeah, it shouldn't be out there. But is it, is your hair on fire about it? Do you need to scream about it? Do you need to make it a critical risk that goes all the way up to the board level in their report? Certainly not. Just tell them to clean it up and do that. These aren't things that are particularly critical. And that we have to realize just all risks aren't created equal. And I honestly think that we as a community have kind of gotten into that hype cycle at the moment with particularly a lot of the exploits and everything that come out. I mean, there are ones that we really need to, you need to pound your fist on the table and say, you need to fix this. Things like Eternal Blue and those kind of things. These need to be resolved. But, I mean, eFail, which just came out, last week. I mean, this is something where I really think we as a community overreacted. I mean, I saw people on Twitter saying, shut down your email or turn off all your encrypted email right now. And it's, you go in and you look at what the attack requires. Think about the level of business interruption that you'd have for a business if you're actually shutting down all encrypted email. I mean, then what are they going to do? Start emailing things in plain text? Is that really that's a greater risk than this is, certainly. What else are we going to do? To shut down email? Yeah, that's never going to fly. I mean, there could be nuclear bombs going off like right now, and the CEO would be calling you going, excuse me, when's email coming back up? And so when you look at a complexity of the kind of attack, and we really need to be more authentic about the level of risk that we actually are showing for things. I mean, is this important? Is it a cool disclosure? Yeah, sure. It is a cool attack, and definitely it's something that should be fixed. But was it something that we really needed to run around hair on fire and just have Twitter blow up for a day about? Probably not. And that's where I think that we tend to do a disservice, because we don't want to get into the habit of crying wolf every time some new exploit comes out, treating it like it's the end of the damn world, because it probably isn't. We need to convey the risk so that when the day comes that there is something where it's like, you can go to the CEO or the CIO with credibility and say, you need to shut this down now. Like, this is a major issue. It turned to turn into a catastrophe for us. And we need to do that. You need to have the credibility to be able to do that, and you're not going to build it by crying wolf and causing them to jump at their own shadow all the time. So, at the end of the day, where we're left with is that when they don't listen to us, honestly, I mean, it hurts. It hurts to be thought of, as just the crazy guy who isn't telling everything, because, I mean, we're smart. We are smart people. We know what we're doing. We know what the risks are. We know how to do things that they'll never know how to do. And that's awesome. And, it's not uncommon as we're sitting in there to be the smartest guy in the room. And so we're not, we don't want people to think that our advice is irrelevant or anything like that, because it actually matters to us. I mean, on top of that, we're dedicated. I mean, people who work in the security industry, I mean, people think they get into it because it's fun. They get into it because they better really, really like it. Because I will tell you, you go through one DFIR call at 4:59 on a Friday, and you basically cancel your whole frickin' weekend to try and help somebody out. You don't do that just because you're looking for a paycheck. You do that because you're dedicated and you want to solve problems. You want to help people out. And that's one of the key things. That's what's so great about the industry. And that's why, having our advice dismissed and having people run off to, the compliance and the vendors and these sort of things, actually, it feels like a stab. And finally, I mean, we actually do care. I mean, we want people to get better. We want security to get better. We want to actually help out the organizations that we're working with and working for. So what does that do? We have to evaluate for ourselves, what is it that they actually want? What is it that they're looking for from us? So what is it? Well, first off, they're scared. I mean, these people are, they get all the FUD all the time. They know that things are bad. They want their business to work and they want to make money. They're scared that something bad will happen, but they're also scared of, this is just going to cost me a ton of money. And I'm not going to be able to accomplish anything. And at the end of the day, I'm going to spend all this money, and then, what? What is it? What am I going to get out of this spend? Well, did I get myself a little bit more secure? Maybe. Am I a little bit better off than I used to be? Maybe. But then they still feel like, well, am I still going to get owned? I spend all this money, I'm going to get owned. Well, then why spend the money if I'm still going to get owned? So there's a lot of fear and everything that you're fighting with them. I mean, and they need help. The security industry right now, I mean, negative unemployment rate are pretty close. We're at a point where it's really hard to find good people, and a lot of times there are people who are getting into this industry who are frankly underqualified, and they need a chance to learn, and they need a chance to be able to do more and get the experience so that they can really contribute. So until that time, it's up for us, the ones who have been doing this, the ones who know what's going on, for us to be able to spread the message and help them understand what they need to do. And finally, they ultimately, guys like the CIO, they just want to help the business. They want to be in a position where the business is successful and they're seen as something that's supporting the business to make money, because frankly, that's how they get paid. And it's certainly how the CEO gets paid. As long as things are successful, they're getting paid very well. So let's look at exactly a couple of examples of what, say, the vendors have to offer for them. First off, for the vendors, when the vendors show up with their poofs and their smoke, which, by the way, there was the greatest guy at RSA this year who was actually selling tincture bottles. I mean, he actually had a booth over on the side and was handing those out, which was just fantastic. Pour a little on your keyboard, get rid of all the APTs. That guy was amazing. Like, I've just never seen a guy spend that much money just to troll people that hard. But hey, good for you, buddy. That was amazing. But the main reason that they listen to vendors is the vendors make it easy, or at least they make it sound easy. You have a hard message you have to give to them. I mean, process is what gets things secure. Actually shoring things up, doing them the right way, going through everything is actually hard. So when vendors promise them, hey, it's easy, just install the box, everything will be great, and you're sitting there saying, but first off, no one knows how to use this damn thing. Number two, it's not exactly what we need. Number three, we don't have the staff to be able to take care of this. I mean, you can put in the greatest logging solution in the world, and if you don't have anyone looking at it or actually taking action on what's happening, the thing is pointless. It doesn't accomplish anything. So telling people the truth is harder. So we have a harder job than the vendors, because they can just promise anything. And then they plug it into the network, and then when they come back and complain about the product, they can just say, oh, well, you're not using it right. What's going on? Secondly, I mean, it's tangible. Trying to sell into an organization or trying to really sell them on, hey, I'm going to take all this effort. And for the record, even if you're working internally in an organization and you're trying to sell a new project, that's cost to the organization. You have to realize that is time spent away from other things. So that is an actual cost for the organization to be able to do that. And that's ephemeral. That's just out there in the world, as opposed to something that's actually physical, like a device or a product or anything else that you're going to plug into the network. That's something that's actually physical, that you're actually going to plug in. And it's a lot easier for a CEO or for a board or for whatever to wrap their hands around, I'm going to spend this money and I'm going to get X. It's harder to say, you're going to spend this money and you're going to get a better process. It's a harder sell that you have in that case. And finally, vendors figure out ways to show that they understand the business and they can support the business. I mean, they have entire groups dedicated to just studying business problems and figuring out what the solutions are to make them easier, and having the security be a part of that. That's their entire goal. So when you're sitting down and you're talking to them, if you're not listening to them and actually understanding what the position is or what they're trying to accomplish, you're already behind the 8 ball. You're not up as far as the vendors are. So next, let's look at compliance. Let's look at why they listen to compliance more than they listen to us. Let's take a look at that. First off, I mean, compliance is basically just a Bible of rules. I mean, it's just the rules for them to go through. So the rules are clear to them when they're actually looking at things, or at least, clear as mud. They're certainly better than trying to understand the entire security landscape and figure out exactly what's going on and where things are. So this gives them at least some sort of guidelines to go off of and some rules to live by. Also, compliance has a huge advantage. A lot of times it's required. If you take credit cards, you have to be PCI compliant. If you have medical records, you're supposed to be HIPAA compliant. I mean, these are some basic things that give you give a compelling reason for the organization to actually look at these things. And finally, the rules at least somewhat tend to be aligned with what the goal of the business is. If the goal has to do with medical records, there's rules around medical records. And same thing with credit cards. It tends to at least understand and align somehow with the business, as opposed to when the worst case scenario you want to be in is when you're sitting there, and if you are viewed as an obstacle to them getting work done as security, then you're never going to have the credibility, and you're never going to be able to penetrate and go through there. So let's shift. We've thought about, okay, what are we saying that's wrong? And we've thought about, well, what are they saying that's actually breaking through the noise? And let's start talking about the types of things or the approaches that we can take to actually get them to listen to what we're doing and what we want them to do, and what will ultimately make them more secure, because we know what that state actually looks like. So first things first, how to get them to listen to us. Number one, first and foremost, we have to listen to them. If we're not listening to them and we're not understanding what their business is and actually sitting down with them and understanding what it is that they're doing and what they're trying to accomplish, we will never help them understand their end goal, and will never help them accomplish what they're trying to get towards. We need to actually learn the goal that they're doing and what their path forward is and how they get there. So in other words, if they're trying to make money, we got to understand how they make money, how they do that. And don't forget, you can learn from anyone in an organization that you encounter, anyone in an organization that you talk to. You know, for example, there was a great, I was talking to a guy last night, a guy named Paul. He's actually speaking a little bit later on. And he was talking about how he was working with folks on the oil rigs. And they had a requirement of trying to lock the keyboards. I mean, the old classic. And people aren't locking the keyboards, you know, screen won't lock. And just classic sort of old school stuff that they're dealing with. And he went down there. He actually talked to him and said, hey, how are we, you know, how can we make your life easier? They complained about it. They said, we can't lock the keyboards because every time we lock it, we have to come back. We've got these big old gloves on from working on the rig, and we got to somehow figure out how to type in our password and get oil all over the keyboard and just to make a giant mess. So, you know, or they got to take off their gloves, make everything a mess, go through everything. It was something that was actually impacting what they were trying to do. So, I mean, what he did, just basically got, you know, card badge, had them log in with the card badge so they don't even have to worry about it. They were all carrying it anyway. Set it up so they could log in with that. Made their lives easier. Now, this is the point where we have to not get on our well actually hat and say, well, it's pretty trivial to clone a HID card. It's just super easy. We could just do that, and then I could go up and I can own the system and I can log in. But when you think about what's the difference in the risk, all of them sitting around unlocked all the time versus somebody having to come on site, clone a badge, do all of that, you've reduced the risk. Is it perfect? No. But it's not the, you know, it is better. It is good. And the same type of solution could work with nurses in hospitals. That same type of thing. Nurses, they come up, they're, you know, they don't, when they need something right away, they don't want to have to sit there and try and type in their keyboard, the password in the keyboard. What it leads to is shared accounts that are always logged in, that are just sitting around with password 123 as the password, or they all share their password with each other, so it's just logged in all the time. Things like that is what it ends up as. So when you actually come up with solutions like that, that's where you can align with the business, and you can think about what are you doing to make things better. Another example, this was an organization that went through some change, and we ended up working on both sides of really two different ISOs that were on the, you know, opposite ends of the spectrum. The first one, you know, he was, frankly, was a jerk. I mean, we got a lot of money, but he wasn't the funnest guy to work with. And he would come out and he would just get in the way of everyone. I mean, he would yell at everyone if somebody wanted something done. If something was interfering with somebody's job, he would just berate them and say, well, we got to make it secure, so screw you. I mean, it was just right in their face all the time. People hated the security department. Every time people from security showed up, they were just dismissive. They fought everything. Everything that he did became a constant battle. He was constantly going up to the fight with the sea levels and everything. And eventually, he made a mistake. And what was that mistake? He did something that cost the company a lot of money in the name of security. What happens? He's gone. They just get rid of him because, again, the job is always to get to the top of the mountain. It's not to be, 100% safe and stay in one place. They're trying to get to an end goal. His successor, first thing he did, went around and talked to everybody, helped them understand what are some things that I could do to make your life better. Just engage, listen to what they're saying, and when you're working with them, just take the time to really understand and put it on receive. I mean, just listen to what they're saying, and you'll find some quick things that you can just identify to say, hey, I can make your life better. We can do this. This is something that will make things a little bit more secure, and it'll make your life easier. Once you start to build up that trust and credibility, then when you go to them with the big asks and the big things that you want them to do, you have a lot more credibility and a lot more ability to do that. The other thing you can do, and this is something that we try and do in the consultative world, is that we all know where they're trying to go. I mean, we know that, okay, that's the mountaintop. Once we've listened, we understand what their business processes are, and then we understand where their security are or risks are. So we understand not only where they're going, but we know where all the pitfalls and where all the problems can be on that. And we just, it's at a point where we're like, okay, let's build a map. Let's build a map together. Let's work together to say, where are we going? Let's build that, that roadmap or that plan that will get you from here to there and do it safely. Now, is it going to be perfect? Probably not. Remember a couple of things. It's our job to understand the risk and communicate them and tell them how serious and how important it is. It's their job to decide what to do about it. So at the end of the day, if they make a decision to say, we're going to accept that risk, that's kind of the role that you're in, that you're always stuck in that particular position. It's their job that's on the line, as long as you communicate it and do that. Also remember, it's their map. It's not your map. It's theirs. You want to engage with them to be able to talk and say, what is going to make the most sense for you? I mean, if you really want to get right down to it, let's say there's some crazy flaming crevasse of doom that they're just walking over with a rickety ladder every freaking time. What can you do to help solve that? I mean, the initial reaction would be, let's go around. This is crazy. Why are we even going over this flaming chasm of death? This is stupid. We're going to get burnt eventually. Let's just go around it. Well, they decide, no, it's too expensive to go around. We have to go over it. So you say, okay, fair enough. Can we at least maybe this time through reinforce the ladder a little bit? Can we do that? Yeah, okay, we'll fund that. You reinforce the ladder a little bit. You can also plan. So give them the second or third best option if they ask for it. If something isn't going to work, don't throw up your hands and say the industry sucks. Think about what's the second or third or fourth best thing that you can put together for them. You can reinforce the ladder. Hey, maybe next year you can get it into the budget for them to have a new ladder to cross the chasm of doom. And then maybe in a couple of years you can get enough funding to build the damn bridge so you actually get across it without getting burned all the damn time. And those are the kind of things that you have to actually think about. And remember, the various different things that you're handing out, the maps and whatever charts or any sort of deliverables that you have to put together for them to help understand where they're going and how they're going to measure and what they're going to do about it. I mean, that's not the reason. Writing reports isn't why we got into security. Making good data to be able to show them isn't what we got into this for. We got into it to hack all the things. I mean, that's what we wanted to do. So, I mean, at the end of the day, things like making sure that we give them what they need is really important. So now when we look at these two guys, we can use them. They are, believe it or not, are actually allies that we can turn into and we can use for our own good to solve our problems. Vendors, compliance, these are things that if you're tuned into what they need and what they're doing, we can leverage them to get what we want. First off, vendors are going to supply you with all the FUD that you ever need. You don't have to scare your guys into doing something. You don't have to say, oh my God, things are going to die. The vendors do that for you all day. Your job is to solve, not to scare, to reassure, to be able to say, hey, we got this. This is fine. This is serious, but we've got it. Here's our solution. Here's our plan. This is what we're going to do. When you can do that, you build a ton of trust because you're not running in hair on fire. You're not freaking out all the time. You're actually bringing something to the table. Another thing is, while vendors have lots of shiny boxes and potions and everything, they're not all crap, believe it or not. They actually have tools that do solve problems. You just got to cut through the BS and be able to communicate, this is what this actually does. This is what it doesn't do, regardless of what they claim it does. And here is how it will actually help the business get to where it needs to get. So, I mean, that means that, if you want to work into this role where you can have this advisor type relationship, you need to understand what the products are. You need to, walk the floor at RSA. I had a talk with Jack Daniel years ago, and he said to me, and it still rings true today, you got to at least go to one RSA and you got to go to one DEF CON. If you really want to understand the two crazy ends of this industry, you got to go to both. And really being able to understand what those what those vendors are offering and what's going on is an important part of it. Because if you're just complaining about them and you don't know what they're actually saying or what they're doing, you're not going to have enough to push back at them. Compliance. We all know without a shadow of a doubt, compliance is not security. It's not the same thing. But there is a lot of overlap. They get kind of close, man. So when you can use compliance to get where you want to go and at least get a framework to make things better, just take advantage of it. Don't berate it and talk about how stupid compliance is. No, say, hey, if compliance can get us here, let's use compliance to get ourselves most of the way there. There's a talk from B-Side San Francisco. Porna put together a talk about building a security program from scratch, and it was just his experience with that. And I love the talk because what he did was he actually, just as the story goes, he buddied up to people in the organization. It was his first job as an ISO. He spent some time just learning and talking to different people, and he found out from the sales guys that they were having trouble getting deals because they weren't high trust certified. He thought, aha, this is my in. This is how I'm going to make things more secure. He got together in the organization, went to the CEO and said, we're going to sell much more business if we're high trust certified. And high trust gave him the framework to actually make things more secure by working with the organization to do that. He was able to get the whole organization to embrace this goal of, well, we got to get compliant. We got to get compliant because it was going to mean more money to everyone. And along the way, they got a hell of a lot more secure as they went to go get there. And when we actually think about the rules from compliance and really what we're thinking with that, we have a hard time thinking that, oh, people never follow the rules. They never follow the rules. It's funny because sometimes when the rules come from compliance, they actually follow them. And it's the strangest thing. I ran into a friend at a doctor's office, actually a friend that I had from like junior high and high school a long time ago. I ran into his little sister working at a doctor's office. Just, hey, how are you? The whole thing. And as I'm leaving, she gets up and she runs out and she says, wait, stop. HIPAA says that I'm not even allowed to say that I saw you here. So is it okay? Do I have your permission to tell my brother that I saw you? Come on. Those are the type of rules that if they're able to follow rules that are that silly like that, you can get them to follow other rules and you actually think about it. Finally, compliance sometimes, when there's something that's really, really obnoxious that you need them to do, compliance can be a wonderful bad guy. It really can. You just sort of say, no, PCI says you got to do it. It sucks, but sorry. You do have that advantage that's out there. So, as I'm kind of bringing this thing home, I like to think that we can go back to our story. And we can think about this guy walking through the deep, dark woods, this CIO, and the mission he's set on from the queen and how he's off to get this goal, and there's evil and danger all around him. And he runs into his, magician and the high priestess offering shiny widgets and, holy compliance. But when the third person appears from the deep, dark woods, we hope that this can be some sort of a sage. They can appear as someone who's smart, someone who understands what's going on. They talk to the CIO like a friend. They can actually understand what the business is trying to do. He knows because he's climbed mountains many times before, maybe not one like this, but he knows exactly what it takes to get there and how to keep people out of trouble. He'll even help talk to, the magician and the priestess, making sure that they're not causing any sort of trouble. And then finally, he will get, hopefully, at the end of the story, he gets the glory and the recognition all throughout the kingdom. And, with all those money, he's able to buy a sweet chariot. So that's really what we're all about here anyway. So, but again, Stephen Heath, Hacker Hiker on Twitter, thank you guys for listening today. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Well, yeah, we could do that. Ukraine? Yeah, no, Ukrainian's not Russian.